Nestled on 55 acres of the original farmland, Historic Locust Grove brings history to life for visitors of all ages through interpretations, exhibits, and annual events. Let's take a look.
At more than 200 years old, the Locust Grove property on Blankenbaker Lane is one of Kentucky's few sites to be accredited by the American Association of Museums. With a small staff and a bevy of volunteers, the story of this now Metro-owned property and its famous occupants is brought to life. Enjoy the journey as we take you back in time to learn more about the founders of Locust Grove, their importance to the region, and this beautiful historic landmark.
Kentucky at one point was a very important place in the history of the country, and I think people need to know about the choices and decisions that people made in the past that really affect them now.
The rich history of Louisville and its surrounding area is on display at scenic Locust Grove.
It's a National Historic Landmark because it's associated with General George Rogers Clark, which makes it one of the very few places from the American Revolution that you can visit in this part of the country. So because he lived here, Locust Grove is famous and visited, but it actually wasn't his house.
The 55-acre National Historic Landmark was established by William and Lucy Clark Cron in 1790. William Cron was an Irish immigrant and the surveying partner of his famous brother-in-law, George Rogers Clark.
George Rogers Clark is a name that everybody's heard, but many people don't really know what's important about him. What he's most famous for in the American Revolution is securing a lot of the territory that would become Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan for the United States. And if he and only 200 men with him hadn't gone and captured strategic British forts, there's a good possibility the Ohio River would be the border with Canada today.
George Rogers Clark, known as both a Revolutionary War hero and the founder of Louisville, spent the last 9 years of his life at Locust Grove, from 1809 until his death in 1818.
He had been living in a cabin across the river in Indiana, but he fell into the fire in his cabin and burned his leg so badly that it had to be amputated. His family got together and said, look, you cannot live by yourself anymore. We're taking charge. You are going to come and live with one of your family members. And William and Lucy Cron took him in. He had at least 2 strokes when he lived here, and so his health usually probably meant he was bedridden.
Locust Grove often served as a gathering place for political and social figures of the time.
Because of their position in the community, lots of people stopped here to see the Crons. One of the best known is John James Audubon, who at the time was nobody much. He was a shopkeeper in Louisville who loved birds. And Zachary Taylor was here. He lived next door. James Monroe, the president, was here, Aaron Burr, who had been vice president, and so forth.
When it was constructed, it was one of the finest houses built in Jefferson County. Although it was a working farm, the residents were obviously wealthy.
A house like Locust Grove doesn't necessarily show you a typical Kentucky farm. It shows you what the best that Kentucky was capable of in this period. Most of the settlers would live first in a log house, and then maybe they would improve and add on to the log house, or maybe they would use the log house just as supplementary on the property where they built a really fine house nearby.
The small staff of Locust Grove try to keep a lived-in look at the house, as it would have been when the Crons lived here.
We messed up the bed a little bit and put some glasses and a book lying on the bed and a folded newspaper, as if he'd just gotten out of bed. He just flung back the bedclothes, and he had a crutch or a wheelchair, but with someone's help had gotten out of bed. We've pulled chairs around the bed as if people had come to visit him. So we're trying to think through scenarios that are plausible.
This is just one of the ways that history is alive at Locust Grove.
That's the Illinois Regiment. Those are Clark's troops.
Throughout the year, events, fairs, and reenactments
they're doing drills
are held to educate and entice guests.
We try to have all our events have a pretty strong connection to the content of Locust Grove, the kind of thing that we teach about.
One of the most popular is the Spring Gardener's Fair and Silent Auction, held Mother's Day weekend.
We have people who are experts in garden and yard design, as well as a lot of vendors who sell products that are related to that.
I have culinary and medicinal herb plants, and they're all organically grown. This is probably one of the biggest events that I do, and it's just a great place and a lovely setting. And they have herb gardens on the grounds you can tour. Just fits right in with the Locust Grove historic site.
Even the gardens at Locust Grove are maintained with heirloom fruits, vegetables, and flowers.
Heirloom means the things that would have been around 200 years ago.
And we go 1820 and older. We have summer Rambos, we have Abram, we have Ashmead's Kernel, Aesop Spitzenberg, Pitt Mason Pineapple, just several of them. I'm holding the corn that a slave here would have held, that she would have made the porridge for her children. It's just kind of neat.
Other events include candlelight tours of the property, usually held in early December, when the house comes alive with dancing, festivities, and only the glow of candlelight in an early 1800s celebration.
How old were you?
I was only 4.
Oh my goodness!
To literally get a peek into exactly how people lived back then.
It's put together with the natural rush, which were these leaves from the cattail plants. That's hardly even available anymore.
Locust Grove's spring encampment offers period craft demonstrations, marching foot soldiers, and cooking demonstrations.
We have military reenactors who take the role of George Rogers Clark's company, which was called the Illinois Regiment of Virginia.
Every man 16 to 60 must serve. That's part of your obligation as a citizen.
They come and camp out here, so they're literally living on the grounds for 2 days, and so visitors can come and learn something about Army life in the 18th century.
For some of the smallest visitors, it's fascinating.
It was cool.
And for their parents, it's a great way to enforce important lessons.
We thought that it might help him understand what it was like to live a long time ago. It's part of your American history. You have to understand what it took to make this country what it is today, and the people who were able to do this, and how everything is not expedient and throwaway.
In addition to all of these events, Locust Grove offers regular lectures and book sales, and they do it all with a small staff and budget.
For a site that's open year-round, 7 days a week, and does a lot of programs, we have only 3 people on our full-time staff. We have 10 more part-time staff, and then we have about 140 volunteers.
The staff here work hard to stay true to the property's heritage, while also keeping the experience fresh and engaging for visitors.
It's tricky to run a site that's open 7 days a week year-round and to ensure the level of quality that we really want here and make sure that all the visitors come away with what they wanted when they came here. But it's, I think, a very successful site. It has a lot of community support, a lot of volunteers, a strong board, and all of that makes it easy in some ways.
A new building offers space for interpretation of the American Revolution in the West and the people who settled and built this region. And new exhibits also focus on the surveying work of George Rogers Clark and William Cron.
We're very excited to have this opportunity to tell parts of the story that don't necessarily come out well in a house setting.
The Locust Grove property stayed in the family for many years until it was eventually purchased by what is now Metro Louisville in 1961.
The physical property is owned by the city, but it's managed by Historic Locust Grove Incorporated, which is a private nonprofit organization, and we own the collection.
The Department of Parks helps to maintain the property, but it's run by Historic Locust Grove, Inc., and relies on admissions, sales, fundraising events, and donations to offer public programming.
We think it's a partnership that works pretty well.
Locust Grove is open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 4 p.m., and Sundays, 1 to 4 p.m. For more information or to volunteer, call 897-9845.
Metro TV, a public service of Louisville Metro government.